Randy Purham is a political activist in no less than Texas. He is also a mover and shaker. He had 22 years in the military. He went to Iraq and Kuwait. So he's a patriot. And this is his second time with us on The Truth. Randy, welcome back.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me back. I truly appreciate it. How's everything going?
Good. I think that how Texas goes, so goes the rest of the nation, maybe. You've got the second or third largest congressional delegation.
I believe
Is
it
it
is.
California, Texas, New York? Or
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Second largest. Yep.
That's pretty significant. And, excuse me, John Cornyn suffered a loss this week in Texas. Did that surprise you?
It did, but not really. It was kind of like a fence for me. But we kind of knew that he was going to end up losing, because it was a big, very big grassroots push for Attorney General Ken Paxton to beat and push out John Cornyn. So the President Trump's endorsement just solidified that, and here we are. So it was time, I guess you could say, for a lot of these folks that's been in office for a long time.
I mean, all he had to do was help push the SAVE Act, and he would still be a United States Senator. I mean, how simple can it be?
Yeah.
Why would he risk his political career on one very good, necessary, in my opinion, and the opinion of many others, necessary piece of legislation? I don't understand why these Republican senators, I don't understand why any senator would not be in favor of the SAVE Act. As far as I'm concerned, it's a red line. And if someone is not in favor of the SAVE Act, they are in favor of cheating. Now they want to debate why cheating is okay. They want to try and convince us that it's okay to cheat.
Exactly. And I think the problem was that not only are they may be in favor of cheating, but they're also looking at, hey, we have a body of people that will vote for us and we can stay in power. There could be some of that. But as far as my understanding of what was going on the internals of the SAVE Act being passed, was that they didn't have the votes to pass it, because you have Republicans that were not in favor of passing or even helping the Trump agenda. And we're seeing the results of these primaries and getting them pushed out, so it can eventually pass, hopefully in the next session.
Do you know who the senators are that oppose it?
Definitely, what's her name? Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski. And then you have Leader Thune, who's on the fence with it. He's saying that he wants to pass it, but there's those two stalwarts in the Senate there that are always against the Trump agenda. So you got Collins and Murkowski that are pushing back.
So if we had Collins, Murkowski, Thune, and Cornyn, that still only gets us to 55. And you're saying that we've got to get to 60, I guess, to overcome the filibuster?
Correct. Yep.
That leaves 5 more people. Would John Fetterman consider voting for it?
I don't know. He seemed like he probably would be in favor of it, given that he's been, slowly coming in alignment with the Republicans on a lot of things in the Senate. But that one would probably be his red line. Like, I'm not going to go that far with you guys. So it's hard to say.
I think it is such a sad commentary that enough of Americans think that it's okay to cheat in elections that we're not going to pass a measure that prevents people from cheating.
I agree. And it is time for Americans to stand up to their legislators and say, hey, this is the agenda that we voted for. This is the agenda that we want. This is the agenda that you need to help push, or we're going to push you out the door. We are at that point. We are at that brink. And, I think it sends a warning signal to the U.S. Congress that the American people is no longer playing with them. And we're seeing results of it across the country right now. So kudos to the American people for finally standing up.
You said a block of voters would oppose the FAIR Act or the SAVE Act. Who? Which voters?
I would say it's those that are part of the chain migration population. and that spans across all ethnicities. But those that are like first, maybe even second generation voters, they're like, we should allow, our family members who may not be residents yet to be able to vote. There's a push like that in California, and so it's kind of crazy that we allow non-American citizens to vote in local elections, and then they say they're not voting in our federal elections. It's like, are we really, monitoring that? So it's an issue. It is an issue.
Well, I think it's so unpatriotic and so afoul of the Constitution and everything this country stands for, and the fundamental foundation of a republic has got to be the franchise, and to destroy that is apocryphal. And I cannot, they say put yourself in the other man's shoes. I cannot put myself in those shoes under any circumstances. And it wouldn't work anywhere else in the entire universe.
You're correct.
You think you're going to go into Russia and vote?
No.
You think you're going to go to communist China and vote? You think you're going to go
Not
to
at
any
all.
European EU country and vote without being a citizen? It is
Nope.
just ludicrous.
It is.
And I think we need to identify those people, and we need to persecute them and run their ass out of the United States Congress. And I think it is happening, Randy.
Yeah.
I mean, Massey is gone, and I'm not sure I'm in favor of that one. I mean, I think we've got to allow discourse and differences of opinion
Sure.
within our party when the value is correct. Opposing the SAVE Act is just wrong on any level, in my view.
Yeah, I agree.
But I also think that voting to expand our government's expenditures is equally wrong, because we are at a tipping point with 39 trillion in debt and $1 trillion a year in interest payments. And where are the adults? It just looks like these weak-kneed people are unwilling to stand up to the special interest and say no. And Trump, who I absolutely consider myself a loyalist, that does not mean that I don't call balls and strikes, but he has not shown the resolve to get the federal government spending under control like he promised us he would.
True.
Because he wants to expand the defense budget from, which is now right at $1 trillion, to $1.5 trillion. Have I got that right?
Yeah, something like You're correct, John. You're correct. There's like 1.5 trillion, and to me, that's a little bit too much, because
It's a lot too much.
A lot too much, yeah.
Every
Yeah.
time I criticize Trump, I find out 6 months later I was wrong. And maybe he knows something that we don't know. And I think if there is something that he knows that we don't know, it would probably relate to China, because they are rapidly expanding their defense. They've got the most powerful Navy in the world right now, and we're now catching up with them. Even though I can't remember the exact number, but I think when we were spending $750 million, they were spending $350 million. So they have been way behind us in spending. But then again, they probably don't have the graft, corruption, fraud, waste, and abuse in their defense spending that we do.
Correct.
So I don't know how much money is represented by that, but I really think this country is in bad shape in its values and our resolve. And it just seemed to me that things went a lot better when everybody went to church on Sunday and was watching Ed Sullivan and the wonderful world of Disney. I yearn for those days. I guess they're gone.
Simpler times. Yes.
I think that the greatest sign of optimism that I've seen is that millennials are flocking in droves back to the church.
I agree. I agree. But the other thing behind that is, what are they getting out of these churches that they're going to? Are they actually getting, world biblical principles, or are they being indoctrinated in a different way, and they're just finding finding I guess you could say, a different echo chamber outside the college campuses. That's my concern. And, talking, I'm here in Austin, Texas, and the churches here, they got LGBTQ flags flying. So it's kind of like, yeah, you got a lot of kids going to church, but what are they getting out of these services? So I agree. It's good that people are going back to church, but I also have the same concern as to what they're getting out of church. But I want to go back to your previous point, John, about China. China actually has also a robust space program,
Yes.
and they have been, on the mark with their space program, and the United States is still somewhat behind with, our space program. So the 1.5 trillion increase in spending, it I can see the necessity for it in a small frame of things. But being that I had 22 years in the military, I seen firsthand the waste and the spending in the military, with ball bearings costing $500 when you can go down to AutoZone and get it for $5. So it's things like that concerns me with our spending, is that we have these contractors and these logistics suppliers. They overly charge for things that you could get easily from the market at a much reduced rate. So if the Secretary of Defense and the Department of Defense actually honed in on these things, I think that our defense spending could be drastically reduced, and will be on par with other countries in terms of defense spending.
Well, the space program, I think, is the future.
Yes, I agree. Absolutely.
And it really transcends defense. Defense is a big part of it, obviously. But to get a jump on everybody else, Elon Musk is talking about putting data centers in space and transmitting the information back and forth between Earth. And if you really get into the weeds on that, it makes so much sense.
Yes.
The space requirements are so much smaller in terms of the footprint, and the energy requirement, it's free. It comes from the sun.
Yeah.
And I've just learned recently, I've sort of started focusing a little more on the solar system and outer space. Do you know what percent of the solar system the sun comprises?
Ooh, good question.
In terms of mass?
Mass, I would say it's probably like 60% maybe.
Would you believe 98%
Okay.
plus?
Wow.
And do you know what percent the Earth makes up of the solar system?
No, I don't.
It doesn't even register.
Oh, okay. There
We
go.
are a speck
of
of
it, yeah.
dirt. So but we're a very valuable real estate because we've got oxygen and water and
Right.
plants and animals and human intelligent life. But so we don't believe that exists anywhere else in the solar system. We're starting to hear dribbles and drabs that there are real aliens that have visited Earth.
Yeah.
What do you think about them apples?
I'm a fan of ancient aliens. I would come out and say right out the gate, I'm a fan of ancient aliens. So I do believe that there may be some extraterrestrial life out there. Now, whether or not it's in a form of what we see in our sci-fi movies, that I'm kind of skeptical about. But I do believe that there may be some intelligent life out there to some degree. Now, whether or not they have the ability to create spacecraft and it's a whole civilization, that I'm like, I don't know about that.
Randy, there are too many credible people
Yeah.
and witnesses who have seen
I agree.
craft in the water, in our ocean, and in our skies that move at speeds that no one can
I agree.
calculate or
I agree.
contemplate.
I agree.
And so I think our government has been hiding that information from us for a long time.
I think our government is in collusion with them. They're probably working with them, and they're sharing this technology. That I can
With
can
the
believe.
aliens?
Yes, that I can believe. That if somebody pitched that theory, I would say I could probably concur with that, because you
That's
got
the
to think.
first I've ever heard anybody say that. That's
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
amazing. You giving me pause. I'm trying to process that.
Think about we have Area 51 that no one is allowed to go near, and everything
Yeah.
else, and the thing, and all the alleged creatures and spacecraft and everything else has been brought there. They have to retransmit that, reverse engineer, and all that kind of stuff. It would not be far fetched for me to see them working with these extraterrestrials in exchange for information and everything else. And it may not be just relegated to the United States government. It could be a global, a global exchange. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't put it past it. That's why we have these movies like Men in Black. You it life imitates art. So I wouldn't be surprised.
So now Texas reapportioned, and
Mhm.
you picked up 5 Republican seats. Is that right?
No, it was 5 redistricted seats, but 2 of them still kind of remain leaning blue. Like Texas 37 is still blue, although they cut out Representative Lloyd Doggett and Representative Kassar. They split those districts, pushed Congressional District 35 down south further, and combined it with some of 15. You still have 37, which is all of Austin. No Republican is going to win in Austin. So
Why
that's
is that? I mean, just
it is a bastion of liberals. That is a I managed the congressional race in this cycle for 37, and think about this: there's 120,000. It was 125,000 vote share between in the Democrat primary to a 15,000 vote share for Republicans in this race. So there's just no way of overcoming. It's a D+24 district. So but they cut it to where you could bring in a larger pool of Republicans, but it's not enough to sway the electorate to make it go red.
so after the redistricting,
Hmm.
what was the net gain for Republicans?
4.
4. Okay. Well,
4.
I said 5. I wasn't far off.
Yeah. Hmm.
But that's negated by California,
True.
which picked up 5
Yeah.
blue seats.
Hmm.
So, but I think Anthony and producer Anthony did a deep dive, and as of a week ago, uh, concluded that we picked up a net of 9 red seats. If that's the case,
Hmm.
we should be looking much more optimistically at the midterms.
Correct.
And to me, there's never been a more consequential election than 2024 than there is right now, because without the Congress, we're dead in the water with Trump's agenda.
Correct.
They won't pass anything. They'll obstruct, and they will impeach, and they will do all the stuff that we've watched them do before. They'll continue to lie. They'll continue to fuel Trump derangement syndrome.
Yeah.
And
Unfortunately.
it's really vital that Republicans get off the couch and go vote, and everybody work to get a huge turnout for these midterms.
Yes, absolutely. And that is the key. Unfortunately and traditionally speaking, midterms have always yielded low turnouts in comparison to presidential cycles. So you're right. In order
But
for
lower Republican
yes,
turnout
lower
than the
Republican turn.
lower Democrat turnout.
Correct. Yes. Democrats tend to turn. I don't know what it is with this dichotomy we have, but Democrats do turn out higher in in midterm elections than they do in presidential, and it's vice versa for Republicans. And so, if we want to keep the course and the trajectory of pushing President Trump's agenda, then we have to be on par with the turnout with the Democrats have as they have traditionally done. And so, I'm optimistic that we might get there in Texas, but the rest of the nation, I don't know. With the redistricting battle going on, that may motivate actually more Democrats and swing voters to come out and vote, and we just get squelched. That could very well be, as we all know. Historically speaking, you look at when a president comes in, he has his first 2 years, and they typically change hands at the House that in that second in that midterm. So these are just historical facts that we're running up against. But with the redistricting, hopefully that may negate that, but with a net 9 +9 gain seat gain, it may work in our favor. Just depends on who loses or who wins in the upcoming November elections.
Well, so in terms of messaging,
Yes.
you said correctly that if we don't keep control of Congress, that we lose the Trump agenda. I'm not sure that it wouldn't be more effective to say that if we don't win the midterm elections, you can usher back in an era of men playing in women's sports, of children being mutilated for sexual trans operations,
Yeah.
massive government spending resulting in hyperinflation,
Inflation. Hmm.
and all the lies that go with it. I mean, that's the thing that really bugs me about government is and it's almost gotten to me, seems to me to have gotten to a point where it's accepted. It is both accepted and expected that our governments lie.
Yes.
And I see it all over the place. I've been watching this guy on YouTube who is really good. He's a civil rights activist, and he goes around the country chronicling police abuse. And in every single case, the cops just lie on their reports. And I'm pro law enforcement. I'm pro law and order. But you know what was his name? Eric Chauvin. What was his name?
Derek Chauvin.
Derek Chauvin.
Yep.
What he did is just wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, it was murder. And I don't know whether it was manslaughter or murder, but it looked pretty darn intentional to me. And so the knee-jerk reaction is defund the police, defund the police. Well, that makes about as much sense as, somebody's drowning, drain the pool.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, is that really going to save the individual? Is that not cutting off the nose to spite the face?
Correct.
And but what we need to do, I think, is have a national movement. And I think this is something that Republicans and Democrats could find commonality in. Hold bad cops accountable.
Oh, amen. Absolutely.
But the system's rigged so that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So understandably, people become frustrated, outraged, and mad at government. But I've seen what some of these cops have done on these YouTube series. I had my own experience with a cop in Atlanta. I was having dinner at Lenox Mall, which at the time was like one of the largest malls in the nation, still pretty darn big and a nice mall. And my wife and I had gone there for dinner, and it was over the holidays, and you could not find a parking space to save your life. So there was this big white checkered off area that was right outside one of the entrances. And frankly, I mean, I cheated. I know I did, but I parked there for 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd slip my car in, especially after hours, because what it really was reserved for delivery trucks. But it was adjacent to a handicap parking sign. Not related, but adjacent to.
Yeah.
And I was on the Young People's Committee at the Shepherd Spinal Center in Atlanta for a number of years, and not parking in a handicap spot was part of my value system. I would just never, ever park in a handicap spot, period, hard stop. So I got back to my car, and there was a ticket on my car saying that I had parked in a handicap spot. Well, Stevie Wonder could tell that it's not a handicap spot.
Right.
It's not a parking spot, but it is a
Yeah.
handicap. So I looked over there, and there's a cop sitting in the car right over there. So I went over and stood about 2 or 3 feet from the car and he was on his phone. He wouldn't make eye contact. He ignored me.
Mm.
Some little girl came and just got right in front of me, got in his face, put her license right in front of him. And yak, 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 yak. He said, "Get out of here. If you don't like it, you go tell the judge." So I just politely continued to stand my ground and wait. He finally got off his phone. He turned around and said, "What do you want?" I said, "Well, I
Wow.
would just like to ask a question about why do you consider that a handicap spot?" He said, "Didn't you hear me tell that young lady, if you don't like it, you go tell the judge?"
Mm.
I said, I didn't say anything except I'm asking a civilized question. Why is it considered handicap? Because I would never, ever park in a handicap spot. He said, "You just go tell the judge." I said, "Go tell the judge what?"
Yeah, that's crazy.
I said, "Why are you treating me like that? Why are you mistreating me? And why did you disrespect that girl?" He picked up his radio, signal 56, signal 56. Good God Almighty. You would have thought I was Bonnie and Clyde all wrapped up into one. Cars, cop cars, security cars came from everywhere. I suddenly found myself surrounded by 15 thug-looking cops acting aggressively towards me.
Wow.
And they said in their report that I was yelling, raising my voice, and gesturing wildly.
Mm.
And I was like, I wasn't yelling. I was scared out of my mind. I wasn't going to provoke those people because my instinct told me that that's exactly what they wanted me to do.
Yep.
So
exactly
I
right.
sat there passively with my arms folded and my hands visible while they detained me for 40 minutes over a frickin' traffic citation.
Did any of them have body cams?
No.
How convenient.
That was a big problem. It was 25 years ago, but you
Oh,
know how
okay,
God
okay.
works in mysterious ways. I'm going to try and wrap it up here because I'm taking too long on this story, but it's a good one. So I looked at those cops and I said, "You have all the fun you want right now, but come Monday morning, it is going to be my turn, and I promise you, you are going to regret the way you've mistreated me."
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of looked at each other like, "Oh my, I wonder what's coming on, where that's coming from."
Mm-hmm.
So I laid awake at night for several nights thinking, how could one little guy defend himself against 15 thugs who are all lying flagrantly? And I said, you know what? Lenox Square, I bet you they got security tapes.
Amen.
So we subpoenaed those security tapes, and it revealed exactly what I just told you. My hands never raised above my waist. I was, instead of gesturing wildly, I was sitting there subdued because I was fearful. And a buddy of mine walked by and he said, "John, what's going on, man?" I said, "Just stand right there, please. I'm in fear of bodily harm from these people, and I need a witness."
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Well, okay." And so, long story made short, I took that officer to court and required all the others to come as witnesses. They did not like that. And I had the security tapes, and we proved that they were liars and that they had mistreated me. So the judge, the consequence was he dismissed the case. They went on their merry way so they could go mistreat somebody else, and nothing happened to them. But I was so pissed off, I filed a civil lawsuit against Sergeant Ronald Miniatis. That's right. He's right there for our Atlanta listeners. And I'm telling you, this is a bad guy. And I ordered his internal affairs records, and I'm telling you, it was 3 feet tall.
Wow.
26 complaints in 24 years at that time. And nothing happened to him. The judge ruled that he had sovereign immunity when the Supreme Court of Georgia, in an identical case, said that a police officer acting off duty for a private employer sovereign immunity does not extend to them. So anyway, I just went through that
crazy.
long story to tell you that police abuse of authority in this country is real.
Oh, hey,
and I
absolutely.
don't like it. Now, don't you write me, johngordontruth@gmail.com, and telling me that I'm anti-law enforcement, because I'm not. Because I went into the worst neighborhood in America, remodeled a house that I raised the money to remodel. It was, tens of thousands of dollars. And in the middle of the hood, we made it a really nice house. And we moved 2 Atlanta police officers into that house, and they lived there rent free, because I do support police officers if they are good police officers.
That's the
key. But there are a lot of bad apples. And you know what? You know whose fault it is?
Our neighbors, the people in those communities.
Bingo. It is our fault. You know why?
Yeah.
Because we don't want to pay them. We chintz out on people who literally put their lives on the line and at risk every day to guarantee our safety.
True.
And then when we get stopped for speeding or a traffic violation, we raise hell and call them bad names. And there's nothing they can do about it except get mad and mistreat us.
Yeah.
But so it's a two-edged sword.
I agree.
I do see both sides of it. But there seem to be more cops who are on power trips and abuse people than there are. Like the guy who pulled me over for speeding 30 years ago. And he said, Mr. Gordon, I clocked you. You were going 40 and then 50 and then 60. I was going to let you go. But when you got to 60, I couldn't wait until 70. So I pulled you over. What's going on? He was so nice that it made me feel bad. And there was no way I was going to act out towards him.
Yep.
But then Sergeant Minneatis was just a first class, power crazed, lying 26 citizen complaints with 2 homicides. Now, in his defense, the first homicide, totally justified. He used his revolver for his own self-defense after half of his cheek had been blown off. Now, I had a lot of sympathy and compassion for him for that. But he used that experience as leverage to do whatever he wanted to do.
Yeah.
And he killed another man who was found to be unarmed, no witnesses, in the middle of the night. And you read the report, it made the hair on the back of your neck stand up. So I don't know, it's a complicated situation, but I think it would be solvable if cities and jurisdictions would simply demand accountability for bad actions. It would stop. It would stop it in a nanosecond. But right now they just beat the system. They don't get it. Yeah.
I agree with you, John. But on the flip side, there is a flip side to that. You have bad cops that are generated because you have bad district attorneys who go after good cops. And so, that's the case we have here in Austin, Texas. You got the DA here, Jose Garza. He goes after good cops for doing their job or actually protecting the community and bring them up on charges of murder and everything else that you can name under the sun. And then the cops are like, man, if I'm gonna get prosecuted for doing my job and my livelihood is gonna be in jeopardy, let me start doing some dirty stuff, and making sure I got me a little nest egg on the side case because I don't know what's gonna happen to me or my family. So you have that little world going on as well.
No question. And then you've got liberal leftist judges.
Yes.
And the cop goes before the judge, and they're made to feel like they're the enemy.
Correct.
And so it like I said, it is definitely a two-edged sword.
I agree.
And I don't know whether when you were on a few weeks ago, I raised this with you, but I think we should start a national conversation with a simple question on what can we agree? Can we agree that we want a law-abiding citizenry, that we don't rape, rob, and murder our fellow human beings, and that we empower the police to do their jobs without being disrespected?
Right.
And that jurisdictions meaningfully hold cops that abuse their citizens out of line, that they're held accountable. They either get demoted, they get their salary reduced, they get suspended, they get further training, or they get terminated.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if that were to happen, you would see a complete 180-degree change in the way citizens look at cops and the
Yeah.
way that cops look at citizens. And then, like you say, if we can get rid of the Soros DAs,
Mm-hmm.
then we get this country back on the right track.
And to add to that, the culture of serving to and protecting, that culture in the police community has seemingly gone away over the years. I remember growing up in Chicago. Uh, I was not afraid of the police in Chicago growing up, and
You were not.
no, I was not. I we actually used to go down to the police station on field trips, and they had like a little, junior cop program, and it provided you lunch and everything else. But and they brought you home. They would, pick you up and bring you back home. And that was the early '90s, and back then, the one logo, the one banner that was on the side of those police cars was to serve and to protect. You don't see that anymore. You don't see that
Now,
with police
what
cars.
you see is the blue line,
Yeah.
and it's
Hmm.
us against them.
Yes.
And it's a
Yes.
cultural thing that has
It is a
got to
culture.
change. And I
Absolutely.
love Trump, but his steadfast appeal to law enforcement, while I get the sentiment, I don't get the lack of accountability. And until that changes, it's only going to get worse.
Hmm.
And that will further exacerbate the us against them mentality. So
Right.
we've just, so I think on what can we agree? Can we agree that we're not going to mistreat our law enforcement people and that
Absolutely.
we're going to support them
Absolutely.
and that we're
Yeah.
going to hold them accountable when
At
necessary?
the same time, yeah. Just
That
like our
would,
politicians.
it's
Just like
not
anybody.
complicated.
It's not. It's just like anybody in society, no matter what your profession is. You treat the good ones, like you treat everybody like they should be treated, and then when they, step out of line, you hold them accountable. This shouldn't even be a conversation, John. That's the crazy part. This is common sense stuff.
Yeah.
Like, people in society should be acting accordingly to the laws and the cultures in which they live. And if you're out of line, then it is a responsibility of not only the people but your family to get you back in line and hold you accountable for your actions.
Yeah.
And so we gotten away from that. We turn a blind eye. We say, "Oh, it's none of my business. Let me keep moving," or we go overboard with it, and we try to take things to the extreme with people, and it's not necessary sometimes. Sometimes people just wake up in a bad mood. They didn't get enough sleep that night, and they just go out and do something stupid that day. Correct the course and keep it moving.
Yeah.
We got away from that, and it's sad. It's very sad.
So do we keep do we keep the Congress in the midterms? What's your prediction?
Good question. I love that question. I think there would be a few departures, but to a whole majority, I would say yes, but it's not going to be a big majority. The Republicans will maintain majority. I would say maybe by 4 seats at best. 4 seats.
Does Paxton win?
Hmm. My predictions currently say no, but I am optimistic that he will pull it
It's
off.
not possible. That's not possible. His opponent thinks that there's six sexes.
I agree.
He is in
Yes.
favor of men playing women's sports.
Yes.
He is in favor of trans procedures for without parental consent.
Yeah.
I mean, he is for everything that is wrong,
With
not
society right now.
in Texas or the United States, but on any kind of a human level. It's just damn wrong.
True.
And if
But
Paxton doesn't beat that clown, then we're doomed.
here's why I say that, John. You look at the 2018 election between Senator Cruz and Beto O'Rourke. Senator Cruz, and these two are you could kind of like consider like mainstream in terms of their wits and everything, but Ted Cruz beat O'Rourke by 2 points.
It was a
And
close, it was a
very
nail
close.
biter at the end.
Yes, yes, and even with Colin Allred's race just this last in 24 when Ted Cruz was back on the ballot, he beat Allred by I believe it was 8 points, 6 or 8 points. So and Allred was just as extreme as we have in Tallarico, and so there is this culture in Texas that actually support these progressive ideologies and everything else, and it's a prevailing culture of these people. So that's why I said, I don't know. When you look at the baggage that Ken Paxton brings to the table in comparison to Tallarico, people are like, yeah, well, hey, yeah, he's a little crazy, but we could control that, and but
You can't fix
you can't
crazy.
control.
You
Yeah, you
can't
can't.
control
I
crazy.
agree. I agree.
Somebody that
Yeah,
thinks
I
that they
agree
can
with you
do
there.
that is
Yeah,
themselves crazy.
that
I
that
will
is
tell you
true.
the difference, I think, between this guy, what's his name? You just said Talrico or something like
Tallarico,
that,
yeah. James
and
Tallarico.
O'Rourke is O'Rourke was, whether you like his politics or not, he had, to me, a seemingly likable personality.
Correct.
I watched Talrico, and he just made me cringe, and I wanted to throw
Yes.
something at the television.
Yes, he is a cringy guy. Yeah.
O'Rourke did not trigger me in that way, but that's a focus group of one. I don't know whether
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
people will
The-
respond similarly or not.
right.
And that, when you talk about Paxton, I don't know him well, but I know him well enough to have held a fundraiser for him in Palm Beach, Florida, in my residence, and we were supposed to have 20 people come to an after party for an event that was at Mar-a-Lago, and these 20 people were going to be prospective donors for Ken Paxton in his AG race a few years ago. And so I spent time with him. I talked to him. He's been on The Truth, and we have texted back and forth with each other. The things that you hearken back to, he was acquitted of. People say he was impeached by the
Yes. Yeah, he was
Texas
acquitted. Correct.
legislature. But the fact of the matter is, yes, he was impeached, but he was acquitted
Acquitted. Correct.
in the impeachment.
Correct.
And so I don't think you can hang that on around him.
No, 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 absolutely not. Absolutely not. No,
And
no.
so, I mean, I don't even remember what the charges were.
It was bribery and abuse of power of his office, and there was one more thing, linkaged to like affairs and stuff like that. And it's not a lot of people's, I guess you could say, pushback on Paxton currently is not even related to the impeachment trial. It's not even related to that. It's the after the fact. Now they're bringing up, how he only put a pedophile in jail for 1 day. They're bringing those kind of things up.
I think the punishment for pedophilia should be death,
Amen.
and they should do it in the town square with a rope. I'm serious. I mean,
Yes.
the danger is that you make a mistake, that you convict a guilty person, and that's not hyperbole, because in your own state, the Innocence Project has freed dozens of men
people, yes.
who were on death row, and DNA evidence that was subsequently
Correct.
uncovered caused them to be acquitted
Yes.
and released from prison. So that is a real risk that I'm very sensitive to. But if you can, with beyond a reasonable doubt,
Yeah.
where the evidence is overwhelming, show that someone took advantage of a young child, I think that is the unpardonable sin.
I agree.
And
100%.
I don't think I could ever be brought to violence, but I can tell you
Oh, I can.
that would probably do it for me. If
Yeah.
anything would do it for me, that would. And that's why I think, and there has been a murmur, like if you're underwater and you're just right here and you're sipping air through a straw, and you can hear a murmur. There has been a murmur under the current of pedophilia in this country now for 7 or 8 or 10 years, and I've been in complete denial of it. But then you read these accounts that are coming out of the Epstein files,
Yeah.
and
Oh, yeah.
it is alarming beyond measure. And
Yes.
I think that's why Trump doesn't want the information to get out, that it will just be too overwhelming, and it will be shameful for too many people in high places, that everybody will know their names. And but we need a cleansing in America today. I
Mm-hmm.
think
I
that
agree.
those sins should be a light should be shined on them, that there should be public humiliation and whatever appropriate punishment goes along with it. But until we get serious, I mean, you know, if you or I jaywalk, we'll
Oh
get
yeah,
thrown in jail.
you
And
ain't
these
lying.
people can lie, cheat, steal, take bribes, insider trading. Adam Schiff can lie to the American people for 2 years about
Mm-hmm.
incontrovertible evidence proving Russia collusion with the Trump 2016 campaign,
Yeah,
and he is not touched.
exactly.
He may get his hand slapped, he may get embarrassed, but where is the punishment for this demon?
Mm-hmm.
I am
Exactly.
so ready for him to get off the national stage and to take assign the seat that he is deserving of, which is in a mental institution, because I think he's a
Yeah,
sociopath. No, I
he
really
is.
do.
He is. No, I
I
agree
mean,
with you. He
anybody
is.
who can look
Yeah.
in the camera and lie like he can and have no remorse or a conscience about it is in serious demonic need of help.
Yes.
And when he was censured by the United States Congress for lying, do you know what his response was? He said he wore it with a badge of honor.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Good
I was just
God.
saying he was proud of. Yeah, I was going to say he said something along the lines of he was proud of it. Yeah, and that's the problem with the politicians that we have in today's society, and this is globally. This is not just in the United States. This is just across the world. Politicians, anybody that's in government, it is almost a prerequisite that you have to lie to people in order to get the job,
No,
and
no,
people are okay with
never,
that. People
never.
are okay with this, and
No,
we see it
I
all
am
the
not.
time. I'm not either. You know, I try in my politics and my philosophy, my political philosophy. I try to do everything with integrity, with honor, and with truth. And
Well,
whether no
I can
matter
just
how
tell
bad
you
it is,
when
it is what it is.
when
Yeah,
when I was in the second grade, I went over to my neighbor's house, and he was painting his fence, and he had two daughters, and they were really pretty, and they were a little older than I was, so I tried to enjoy their company every chance I got, and they were painting that fence, and I went over, and I said I'd like to help paint the fence, and they gave me a paintbrush, and I was painting away, and I don't know, at some point, I guess I touched the fence for some innocently, no malicious intent. And the dad came by and said, "Good God, who put their hand on this fence?" Everybody was looking at each other, and nobody said a word. I was like, I ain't saying anything. He said, "All right, everybody, turn your hands over. Show me your palms." I turned my hand over, and it was covered with red paint. "You go home." I have never felt so ashamed in my entire life.
yeah.
Not that I touched the fence, but I didn't fess up to it.
There's a fess up to it.
And
Yeah.
and so, I mean, here I am, 73, like 67 years later, 68 years later, and I still remember the lesson. And I just told the voters in Georgia, I said, "You asked me a question, I'm going to tell you what I believe and what I
Right.
think.
Yeah.
And if it's so objectionable to you that you can't vote for me, I understand, no hard feelings, but I am not going
Gonna lie.
to lie to you."
Right. Absolutely. And that's my philosophy as well. You know, you may not like how I say it, you may not like what you hear, it's going to be the truth. You know,
Yeah.
and I always tell people, you know, I swore an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States, not your feelings. And so, however I deliver something is just how I deliver it. That's just my persona. It is what it is. And people, you know, at first they kind of get taken aback by it. They're like, "Oh, that's evil. That's mean." And it's like, no, it's the truth. Truth hurts sometimes. It is what it is. So,
Well, there was a famous line by, I think it was Dustin Hoffman. Who was it? Somebody that said, "Yeah, truth is like poetry, and nobody likes poetry." And
okay,
that kind
yeah,
of says it all to me.
yeah, that's true. That is true.
But I
Yeah.
think we
Yes.
you know, we got to put on our adult face and just, you know, be willing to hear and accept the truth, and then be willing to act upon it.
Correct.
And that's my hope for this country and our culture. One, that we all get along like Rodney King said, why can't we all just get along? And I've come up with the answer. I know why we can't get along, Randy. Our leaders don't want us to.
Exactly.
When Barack Obama had a chance to bring us together, he forced us apart. And I'm sorry, when Tiger Woods had a chance to bring us together, he pushed us apart. And I don't think that Donald Trump has been a particularly good healer. The problem is that politicians are politicians. And they're going to say what is going to help them and portray them in the most favorable light, not to the masses, but to their base. And I just, I'll never be a good politician because I'm just not going to stoop to it.
Right. Yep. Absolutely.
And if that's what it takes, count me out. But it seems to me that also, if on what can we agree? On what can we agree? How about we just adopt the 10 Commandments?
Simple enough.
And we don't have to put it in biblical terms. We'll just say, don't kill. Don't cheat on your spouse. Put it in, let somebody in South Georgia write it. Man, don't you cheat on your wife. Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes. Plain layman's terms. Yeah.
But just get it, take the religious component out of it. Tell me which commandment can we not agree on?
Right. And there's
the ninth commandment, I would like it. I would like it to be number 2 because that takes care of a whole bunch of the rest. Don't bear false witness. Don't covet thy neighbor's wife. I mean, those are lies. Just make thou shalt not lie number 2 on the list, and I think several others go away. We boil it down and make it a simpler list to remember.
Correct. And why? And John, my question to your audience is, and it's something for them to think about. Why is it that the 10 Commandments has to be considered something of religion, and not just something of common sense? That just a basic set of rules to live by. We demonized doing the right thing, and it talks about this in the Bible as well. That the times will turn bad when things that are seen as good is now bad, and things that are bad are now good. And so this is where we at now. When we say, "Oh, the 10 Commandments," they're like, "Oh my God, you talk about the 10 Commandments?" It's like, well, what's wrong with that? And this is where we at in society right now. People want to equate religion as a bad thing when it's actually a moral compass for us to just look to when we are in questionable times.
Well, it also requires everyone to get on board.
Yes.
And the number one victims of black crime are black people. And so I've always felt like that if we could help humanize and have young black men, and I'm not singling out black people, but the statistics prove it to be true. That most violent crime is committed by young black men, and most of the victims, the overwhelming majority, I think it's in the 90s,
90%,
are their peers.
Yes.
What a shame. What a crying shame. And I just sense that I've got this fantasy, but it's a good one, that if we could just expose them to the pain, the trail of grief that they are going to result in with other people in that person's family, and the victim is not going to feel the pain, maybe momentarily, maybe in the act, but it's a split second. So if you're going to inflict pain on someone, murder should not be the answer.
Correct.
That would be the worst form of retribution you could get against the victim, because they're gone. They're not going to suffer.
Right.
They will rest in peace. On the other hand, their relatives, their brothers, their sisters, their
It's,
moms, their dads, and aunts, and uncles, and their friends are all going to be left in this wake of overwhelming grief.
hmm
And so, why can we not outreach to these young men? And, you know, they probably just need love.
yes, that's all it is. It's love and the right kind of attention, not just
That's
giving them
right.
attention, not just giving them attention just to be giving them attention just to appease them for the moment. It's the attention of identifying where are they lacking the empathy, where are they lacking the emotional control, and actually coaching them and training them and teaching them how to deal with that mental anguish, whatever that may be. And that's the problem that a lot of young black men are having these days is they lack the emotion because they have deleted it out of their system because they don't know how to deal with it. So they go out and they commit crimes, they kill people, or they say things to somebody, they disrespect people because they lack the emotional intelligence required to deal with society. And so once we identify and address that problem, you'll see a 180-degree shift in how young people, it's not just relegated to black people or black young men. This is relegated across, our society today, that young people are just generally disrespectful. And so however they want to deal with the issue at hand, they resort to violence first, talk later. And then they don't care about the consequences because there's no sense of accountability that's coded in them. So they see jail as three hots in a cot, and they don't have to deal with society. So that's the problem that we have today with our culture.
Well, there is a there are a lack of role models,
Yes,
and
severely.
and that doesn't just speak to the black community, but
Right,
you
right.
know, divorce is just as not as prevalent, but pretty worse than it should be in the white community as well. But I really, you know, if you want to place blame, and I want you to tell me if I'm wrong, and my purpose is not to offend, but I
Sure.
think there is a shortage of black leaders. And I don't mean politicians, I mean real
Leaders.
leaders.
Yes.
And Marvin Arrington, who was a judge in Fulton County, whom I actually know reasonably well, and Bill Cosby were on a crusade to
hmm
help coach and discipline people who came into the courtroom disrespectfully towards the judge. And they really dressed them down. And both of those men got such tremendous blowback. They were racist. They were Uncle Tom. They were this. They were that.
hmm
How dare you attack this young boy? And the fact of the matter is, they were young boys. They were like 16 years old, coming into the courtroom with their pants down to their knees and acting like that they were owed no one and accountable to no one. And
hmm
so the judge would scold them. Now, my dad would not have scolded me. He
No.
would have just sent me to my room, had me lay down on my
All across
stomach
the
on the
bed.
bed while he
Yep.
thrashed my butt.
Yep.
And I'm not for really corporal punishment like I used to be. I don't know. I think we've maybe gone beyond it. But I can tell you, it sure did teach me a lot of self-discipline and on some levels gave me a huge amount of respect. And for one thing, I knew not to cross my daddy
hmm
or my
Yep.
mama because
True.
she was even worse
She was
or
worse. Yep.
better.
Yeah, yeah, and absolutely, you're absolutely right, and that's the difference in the cultures. And I don't mean cultures as in ethnicities and backgrounds. I mean cultures as in generations,
Yes.
generational cultures.
Yes.
It's a difference because, like you, I grew up and I was out of line. My mom she would give me that look like check, and there's nothing else out of it. She would just let me continue on. And then when Dad came around, she would give him the report, and it's like, let's go outside. And it was like, snap, I'm in trouble. And yeah, and he would
Well,
he wouldn't do it privately. He would kick my butt in front of my friends, and he would like let that be a lesson to you all as well. If you do something that I don't approve of, I'm coming after you next, type of thing. So that was that. To your point, yes, we do lack black mentors, black leadership in the communities today, because it is frowned upon to actually engage with children or engage with other adults and say, "Hey, you're not doing the right thing," because it's going back to the mind your business mentality.
Yeah.
And then you also have those that are willing to mentor and coach and be leaders in the community. They lack the resources and the bandwidth because there's so many issues that they just can't tackle them all. But they also lack the resources necessary to actually affect what's going on in these communities. So
Well, but you
you're
know
right.
what? We can all play a role.
Yes.
And I don't think you have to be black to mentor a black kid.
No.
I
No.
don't think you
Absolutely
have to
not.
be white to mentor a white kid. I don't think you
Yeah.
have to be necessarily Christian to mentor a kid. Although I think it's desirable if we could adopt the Ten Commandments, regardless of religion. I interviewed somebody, or I didn't interview them, but I'm going to, but I spoke with them at some length the other day
Yeah.
over the phone, and this individual was a descendant of a king in Nigeria, and she had actually converted from Christianity to Islam. Is that what you call it?
Mm-hmm.
And
Islam. Yeah.
Islam, and had read the Bible and the Quran, and she said that the books are more similar than they are different, and that there are components in the Quran that really support the Ten Commandments. So
Mm-hmm.
I just continue to think on what can we agree, and on one thing, can we agree that being able to have a healthy, honest, real conversation between all species on this earth is a healthy thing? Because Randy, I love
Mm-hmm.
you, brother. I mean,
Yeah. Love
I
you too.
enjoy talking to you so much, and I can say things that I'm uncomfortable saying, but I feel like need to be said, and you
Mm-hmm.
don't respond with anger or pushback, and we just sort of work through it together. And
Yeah.
I think if all people did that, this would be a wonderful place to live.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that is the problem that we have in our culture today, is that we get offended just for trying to have a conversation.
Oh my gosh.
People don't want to talk about anything because it's too sensitive, it's taboo, and I'm a very big pushback. I push back so hard against the idea of don't discuss religion and politics in the workplace and all. I'm like, man, look, religion and politics is already in the workplace. Where do you think these policies came from? They were derived from politics. Where do you think the culture of wearing the dress code and all that came from? It came from religion. So don't tell me let's not talk about religion and politics because it's taboo or it might offend somebody. Hell, we're already offended because we got up at 8 o'clock in the morning to come to work. So I'm offended. I'm offended that you're offended. And so
That's it.
that is where we at today. And if we can mature ourselves and materialize enough willpower to say, let me get over my emotional, my mental state of emotions and engage in this conversation and have that exchange of ideas, exchange of feelings, and say, hey, okay, yeah, I see where you're coming from, but here's my perspective, and that dialogue goes back and forth. We can accomplish so much. We won't even need politicians. They would come around and say, "Oh, vote for me. I'm going to do this." It's like, yeah, we already agree that you're not going to do that. So how about you have a seat and we're going to come and take your job? And that's how we actually fix our society. That's how we fix our government. And until we get there, we're going to continue to have these problems because media is also the problem in our society. They keep us divided on behalf of the politicians. And when media gets involved, we get into these silos and listen to the headline news and the 5 second story clips, and we formulate our opinions based on that silo and that narrative that's being pushed. And those politicians come along when we see them at the city halls and the town hall meetings or go to their websites. We see that same regurgitated narrative that's being pushed by their buddy media. This is where we at. We get into this split, this dichotomized society, and we don't know what the truth is anymore. We just go based on what we feel is the truth. So
Man, that sounds to me like a great theme for a book. Oh, wait, it is.
well,
It's
wait.
called Polarizing
Polarizing
America
America.
by
Yes,
Randy Purham. It's worth a
absolutely.
read.
Yes,
Boy, he
thank
gets a
you.
pretty penny for it, but where do we get it, Randy?
You can pick it up on anywhere that books are sold. That's Amazon, Barnes and Noble. You can go order online and check it out. Yes, I talk about how the media destroyed our society essentially, and how many of the listeners today, they probably don't even listen to legacy media anymore. They're actually turning to podcasts and shows like ours and like yours. They say, you know what, this is what I need. Is you still get current events in, you still get opinion, but you also get an explanation of the opinion versus like I said, that 15-second clip of pushing a narrative and that's it. You hear nothing else about it ever again. And so I think that it's a great read for the American people, for people across the world, just to understand how we're being manipulated, how we're being conditioned, institutionalized in a way that actually keeps us pitted against each other from actually making effective change in our society.
Randy Purham, ladies and gentlemen. He is an author, a patriot, a veteran, an entrepreneur, and a Republican political activist down there in the great state of Texas. And, if I may be so presumptuous, and my friend. Randy
Absolutely.
Purham, thank you for coming on The Truth, and you're
Thank
welcome
you
back
for having me.
anytime.
Thank you,
Have
sir.
a,
Thank you for having me.
have a
God
great
bless.
rest of your day.
You too. Thank you. God bless.
God bless you, and God save America.